the evolution and the availability of Isotope RX, the noise reduction program I told you about, is just phenomenal. 10 years ago, you wouldn't have had that in the advanced state that it's at. I feel like the algorithms, which I don't understand, I'm not a physics person, I just think it's outstanding what they can do to manipulate the audio. We have a weekly contest at the shop of, whoever had the worst audio clip for that week does not have to buy the beer.
Welcome to Cinema 5D on the Go. Moving conversations about moving images with filmmakers and industry leaders. Brought to you by Tilta, Blackmagic Design, Manfrotto, and Olympus OMD in association with Sony. This is your host, Nino Leitner.
Well, welcome everybody to this episode of Cinema 5D on the Go. We're still in Vegas, and today we have an audio-centric show. Our guest is Cheryl from Odd House Audio.
Correct, in Silver Spring, Maryland.
And she's an audio engineer and re-recording mixer. And well, here we are at a cinematography/broadcast show. Yeah. What are you up to in Vegas?
Oh my gosh, well, not seeing Vegas. That's why I wanted to do this show. I was like, oh, I get to see the Strip. I'm teaching some classes for PPW here at NAB. Mm-hmm. I did some all-day hands-on workshops for video editors in Premiere, trying to teach them a little bit about audio. And 360 VR class, audio class with Joe Powers, who works with me a lot in Silver Spring, Maryland. And a narration class, did a couple panels, Gals and Gear, that's how we met up. Yeah. And I'm just here checking out the floor and meeting up with
great.
manufacturers.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you, like what you do and how you got into that.
Well, I'm a re-recording mixer, sound designer. I own a studio in Silver Spring, and I fell into audio post as a way to start learning how to compose for film, for my own music, and I just fell into engineering and worked for free.
But you wanted to be a composer?
I wanted to be a composer, but I found out that I was a much better engineer than composer. So I stuck with what I knew, what I did well, and had a plethora, luckily for me, a plethora of opportunity opened up, and I just kept on snowballing. Worked in DC for a while, went up to New York, worked in advertising for a while, had a bunch of great mentors in both places, came back to DC to raise my family, and then opened up my own shop about 10 years ago.
Awesome. So what does your average project look like, the stuff you work on?
Well, I'm really lucky. I get to work on totally different, diverse stuff. I don't get to only work on TV scripted or documentary or whatever. We do a lot of radio spots, promos, some advertising in there. I do a lot of documentary, a lot of feature-length films, about 4 independents a year. And then also we do a lot of programming, TV programming. I just finished up a series for Smithsonian Channel that's going to be on the air, America in Color, which I bring it up because they took all this old footage and put it in color. Yeah. And then told the story with this colorized vintage audio, and not just colorized, but actually historically accurate colors of what people would look like or what they'd be wearing. It's very, it's very fascinating. Anyway, I digress. So it varies. I do a lot of museum work. I did about 90% of the audio for the new African American Museum in DC. And then I also did some, bigger screen stuff for the Nixon Library recently. So it's all over the map. Cool. So there's nothing typical, and that's what I love about it.
So audio for us, all of us are shooters, and I think the majority of our audience are, filmmakers. Audio is, I wouldn't say a necessary evil, but it's a very, very important necessary evil. That quote that we mentioned before we started the recording, sound is more than 50% of the image. I think is very, very true, because you would, for example, accept bad audio, bad video on an interview, for example, but you would not, the audience wouldn't accept bad audio on that.
Right, exactly. I mean, you get really disrupted and pulled out of the story if you hear something that triggers that. And so if we're both doing our jobs right, you know, it should be a seamless experience, unless it's a VR interactive thing where you need a trigger or whatever is driving the story at that time, I should say. But you know, I try to avoid, you know, location sound at all costs. I'm just not into it. That's just not my bag.
You personally, or your whole company?
Again, we're audio post. We don't do production. I've had people ask me about that, and I'm like, yeah, no. Let me give you the names of a few guys I know that are really, really good, and you know, you go for it. I just I believe in, you know, doing what you do and do it well. You know,
that's absolutely right. That's one thing I learned over the last few years as well. I just stopped doing the things I really don't enjoy. And for me, that was, you know, like a lot of editing stuff. So.
And also too, then you can focus on the things that, the skills that bring you happiness, and also.
Yeah, and you will be better at it.
Right, in your creative outlet.
Yeah.
And you know, there's no knock on location sound. For me, I have total respect for it. It's just not my bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you sometimes, when you work on indie features or shorts, are you confronted with a lot of terrible audio recordings, or is that?
On a daily basis. We have a weekly contest at the shop of, you know, whoever had the worst audio clip for that week does not have to buy the beer. So we are, we're confronted all the time with it. We use a product called Isotope RX. And they just came out with something new here at the show, Isotope RX6. I can't wait to really get my hands on it. Can you explain
what Isotope is? I know it, but I think a lot of our audience would be amazed to hear about it.
It's so amazing. It's a noise reduction software that allows you to do everything from drawing out car honks on a dialogue or a bird, or taking out crickets.
So you literally, the way I see it, I only heard about it like a few weeks ago. So you see the audio, you look at the waveform, and you see the weird stuff you want to paint out, and you just erase it like Photoshop, right?
Right, but it's Spectral Analysis, so it's a frequency analysis software. So you see, or you have a preference to not see the waveform above these frequencies. So you look for the area in which you want to either paint out or attenuate, just kind of like Photoshop. What I use it for a lot, like every day, is taking out mouth noise. I'm sure you guys get that a lot too, where you get a lot of mouth noise in dialogue, and you get like, oh, I have to cut that out. Well, I use the declick, and now they have a specialized mouth declicker to use, which is fantastic. And they even have something new I haven't gotten my hands on, that's a de-rustler. So it takes out the rustle on the lav.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't got my hands on it yet, so I can't. But it's a fabulous piece. I use denoise all the time. But I try to avoid using the tool in front of clients. They think we're magicians. You know, it's like, oh, they can fix anything. I can go out and do anything I want to in the field, and it just doesn't. It just doesn't promote good work practices. So, but I can't speak more highly of Isotope. And New Gen is also here at the show, and they are amazing. They are one of the leaders in loudness measurement back when the COM Act first came out.
Yeah.
For those of you in broadcast, the COM Act is when the government pretty much said you have to mix this way, dynamic range, so that you don't get spots that are just like booming loud all the time, you know, monster truck level. But they're leaders in their field for measurement, measuring loudness. But they also recently just came out with a 7.1 up mixer that sounds unbelievable, and it is also in my workflow in the studio for Atmos, for Dolby Atmos mixing, which we just put in December. So we've got a few titles coming up for Dolby Atmos this year. I can't really talk about that too much. It's an NDA situation.
We can just bleep it out.
Okay.
No, but what is your biggest challenge on an everyday basis with these recordings that are not, you know, up to what they should be, like standard-wise?
Well, also, too, you guys probably have to cut the heck out of an interview to make it sound right. You know, to have things sound the way you want and get the cuts. So it's not just noise. It's also the Frankenbites that you know people put together to make the soundbite that they want.
Yeah.
But the real challenge is making everything seem seamless. So, or real. Like before we got in the car, I got really worried about like, yeah, what's this going to sound like? You know, because we're in a convertible driving around Vegas. But I do a trick where I keep the raw audio, the unnoise reduced audio underneath the noise reduced clip.
Okay.
And I over noise reduce the clip, and then bring slightly, you don't want that plastic sound, and then slightly bring in the raw till I find that balance of what I want. It saves a lot of time because you're not constantly going back and forth.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's similar to what we do in video as well. You know, it's like you would look. Yeah, I like to do something similar where I try to. Yeah, sometimes I keep the original like raw footage of before I do the grading. You know, just copy it on top and then. Just compare it in order to find out, okay, how much noise do I want to keep in the shot, and how much do I retain of that original look? Because obviously we have the problem of dynamic range, so you have to, as soon as you put a grading on, you will lose at either the shadows or the highlights or both, in order to make the image look more contrasty. Yeah,
so. I know way too much about color grading that a audio person should know, because I partner and collaborate with Robbie Carmen, who's a lead colorist, and he also has a training website with Dan Moran and Pat Inhofer. I hope I said that right. Mixing Light, and so I'm always around those cats, and they're always talking color and LUTs this and grade that and noise this, and you know, and doing a lot of work for broadcast, I'm very well aware of what the requirements are for the color of the online, the audio.
Cool. So in terms of audio technology, I know a lot of things have happened in filmmaking, but you know, our audience is probably not as familiar what, you know, the revolutions that have happened in audio over the last 10 years. So what for you was a technology that really changed the way you're working?
Well, the evolution and the availability of Isotope RX, the noise reduction program I told you about, is just phenomenal. 10 years ago, you wouldn't have had that in the advanced state that it's at. I feel like the algorithms, which I don't understand, I'm not a physics person, I just think it's outstanding what they can do to manipulate the audio. I also feel like the advent of the employment of 360 audio, even though the technology has been around since the 70s when Michael Gerson actually introduced it in Britain, it's finally getting some play here with tetrahedral microphones, ambisonic audio. You know, we're finally getting tools like Facebook 360 tools that just came out, where you can actually track your audio, you know, and keep that in a 360 format. So, and tools like Audio Ease, where you can do the same thing, just as a little bit similar.